We're back today to do Apiguard treatment on these colonies. I'm also going to take a minute to talk about something we've been experimenting with, and I'll show you that once we start taking the lids off of these colonies. We're near we're near Dillard, Georgia, and I want to show what we're doing with the Apiguard. Selena likes using these queen excluders to prepare the cards beforehand, and we'll talk about dosage here. These are all single-story colonies. All of our colonies except for 1 yard this year are single-story. What I consider normal, if temperatures are say 83 or 85 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, a normal dose for a double D would be 50 grams. And I would also say that 30 grams would be the proper full dose for a single. And last week we did a number of singles and gave them a full dose of 30 grams. The temperatures were in the upper 70s and low 80s, and that worked. But forecast for tomorrow is 90 degrees here. It's going to be 88 today, so we're going to cut the dose down to 20 grams for a single. You can really ruin a colony by using full doses of Apiguard in hot weather. It not only does it shut them down, it can actually drive them out of the colony. Ask me how I know that. I learned that the hard way a long time ago. So we're using this hypodermic type gizmo that comes with these tubs of Apiguard, and she just wouldn't you know when I'm videoing it doesn't go right. So you can see she's putting 60 grams in there, and then she's gonna put 20 grams on each card. And John and I will go open the colonies up and prepare them, and she'll put the card right in there. It's really simple. Now, let this truck go by. The other problem with doing this 20 gram, or what I would consider half a dose, is it won't last as long. We opened up some colonies that we'd done this to, and within a few days it's gone. So normal timing for a full dose would be 10 days to 14 days. You come back and give them the next full dose, and then that's considered a full regimen. With the half a doses, normally you would consider maybe 5 to 7 days as the right time duration, then you come back and do it 4 times. And because we're going down to 20 grams, I expect this to be gone in just 3 or 4 days. So I think 5 days will be the right time to come back. Now, just because the thymol is completely gone or has completely disappeared in just a couple days doesn't mean it's done working. That you can still smell the thymol in the colony for a couple days after it seems to be gone, and that's because it's absorbed by the beeswax. Ethereal oils like thymol, most of them tend to be absorbed by beeswax, but the good news is they dissipate very quickly. In other words, a week or 2 later, it's gone. That's completely different than some of the synthetic chemicals that are out there today. One is amitraz, which is what we see as the active ingredient in Apiguard. Another is fluvalinate, which is the active ingredient in Apistan. And another is coumaphos, which is the active ingredient in Checkmate. The chemical amitraz does not hang around a long time. It breaks down into 2 metabolites, or basically 2 compounds. I'm sure there's some other minor things, but there's 2 major compounds it breaks down into. One is referred to as DMF, which is a long word that I can't pronounce, DMF. Amitraz does not show up as amitraz when you have a lab test done. It shows up as DMF mainly. DMF has a properties where it stays in the honey, it migrates towards honey or water-based products, whereas things like fluvalinate and coumaphos do just the opposite. They are readily absorbed by a lipid or a fat, which is exactly what beeswax is. So, that's a problem. The other problem is that fluvalinate and coumaphos, I wouldn't go so far as to call them forever chemicals, but I would call them a pretty darn long in a beehive chemical. They have a tremendous half-life in beeswax. They just don't go away. They don't interact with some other chemicals very well. Specific interest to beekeepers is fungicides and of course other pesticides, but fluvalinate has been shown to interact poorly with pristine and some other fungicides that are very common. So I would recommend not using Apistan or Checkmite as a mite control. Apiguard, not so bad. That chemical tends to go away with time, but those other two do not. That's one of the reasons I've gone completely organic. I do not use any synthetics in my colonies anymore. Organics, all of them either are not absorbed by beeswax or go away pretty quickly. For instance, formic acid and oxalic acid are not absorbed by beeswax at all. There's no problem there at all. Whereas the synthetics are all absorbed in one way or another, either by the beeswax or the honey. Okay. These are extended oxalic acid release pads, much like the Swedish sponge routine that Randy Oliver has talked about so much. A friend of mine, Greg Rogers, did an excellent presentation at the North American Honeybee Expo on these things, and pretty good data. And I will admit here that this is the second year I've been doing this. We've been playing around. I feel very comfortable doing this. I don't feel like we're doing something wrong that's going to contaminate the honey. Oxalic acid vaporization has been okayed to apply with honey supers on. There is oxalic acid already in honey to a minor degree, and research studies have showed it's really, I'm not even sure if it's possible to use these type of treatments and get enough oxalic acid in your honey to go over what is considered the acceptable limits. it for some reason just doesn't seem to be absorbed by the honey. So there's a product coming out called Varroxan, if I'm pronouncing it right. It's much like the Aluin cap product that's sold in South America. I'll put a link in this at the end of this video for that study that I was involved with. And it showed that it does have an effect, but the effect is interesting. It's not a curative treatment, although I've seen some claims that it is. I don't believe it is. It tends to keep your mite numbers down if they're already down. And if you have high mite numbers, you probably need to use something besides this, because this will not tend to bring high numbers down. It kind of keeps your numbers at a flat line. And that's all we wanted for this summer. We just didn't want our mite numbers to go through the roof before we got around to doing Apiguard around the 1st of August. I'm not going to get into the recipe for this product. Randy Oliver has talked about it at length. I would recommend going to his website, scientificbeekeeping.com, where he talks about it at length. And I'm also going to try to film Greg Rogers in September when he's going to do his presentation for the Georgia Beekeepers Association. And if it goes well and it's a good film, I'll put that up for everybody to see. We're going to do some mite counts here. You got the kit out, John?
Yes.
You got the mite kit? Let's do some mite counts here. I want to see just what we got. This colony is a dud right here. Let's put the lid on this thing.
Do you have a particular one?
Oh, just pick one. It doesn't matter. Pick the one you got right there.
Right here?
Yeah, let's just... we're going to do several mite counts in here. Our mite numbers were pretty good coming out of winter because we did do oxalic acid vaporization back in December when the bees were broodless, which really does put a hurting on the mite numbers. And even in early April, when we were doing mite washes, we were still getting a lot of zeros. I think we had 1 in these colonies that did not go south for the winter. We had about 200 colonies go down to South Georgia for the winter, and in those colonies the numbers were notably higher. And we are going to check some of those colonies too before the day's over and compare. But I've already checked several yards like this. I just wanted to do some on film here so we could show what kind of mite numbers we got in these colonies. So we use this Varroa Easy Check kit, which works good for us. There's a few different brand names of this situation on the market today. We're using the Varroa Easy Check. It works for us. We sell them in our store. They're not expensive. Anybody who's serious about beekeeping really needs to look at their mite numbers throughout the year several times. That's a pretty healthy looking brood pattern right there. I know the camera doesn't pick it up well. I see some of the larvae glistening. Turn it over on the other side. I see some larvae glistening in the light. They actually look really healthy. There's not a lot of brood in our colonies right now, but and that's one reason why these large number of bees are going to shrink soon, because as the older summer bees that were here for the honey flow start to die off, the limited amount of brood is not going to replenish those numbers to the same extent. And John just dumped in, that's a half a cup, and he had it kind of overflowing, so a half a cup of bees is around 300. It's not rocket science. We're not interested in extremely precise numbers because that was so overflowing with bees. I'm going to guess he has 350 bees in there, might be a little more. And he will shake this thing for about a minute, 60 seconds. Don't just do it for 10 seconds and think you're done. He'll do this for 60 seconds, and then we'll look at the mite numbers. And Selena's still pulling these pads off. These are looking pretty good here, Selena.
They sure are.
What do you got, John?
Two. I see three.
Got
Two or three.
2 or 3 mites?
3.
3 mites, okay. We've been in some other yards where we only had 0s and 1s, but
3, 4. Might be a couple more. 1. No, I just see 3.
okay, all right.
2.
So because we have 3 mites in there, we're just going to use the alcohol again on another colony. I want to keep going. Let's check some more. The bees don't seem ill. Are you getting stung at all, Selena?
Not at all.
not at
I
all.
got stung just once.
You got stung once?
Well,
Okay.
once or twice, but
Yeah, they seem to be in a decent mood, even though it's really overcast. My goodness, it's not the best day to be working bees, but so far we're not running into anything extremely mean. As soon as I say that, John's going to get stung.
This colony seems a little anxious, but
Okay. Glad to see a little brood in there. Some colonies have almost no brood, yeah. That actually looks good. Of course, that's about to change. This Apiguard will shut the queen down, and I'm okay with that. This is just, let's see, I think it's the 30th of July today, and for the next month there will be very little pollen coming in, and it tends to be a natural time for bees to be shutting down. And then in about 3 or 4 weeks, the goldenrod will start blooming, and they'll start producing brood in earnest. So now's a good time to shut the queen down and get the mite treatments in. One of the reasons I really like to do mite treatments at this time of year is because I want to get these colonies really clean before they start rearing winter bees. If you get a heavy mite load and the viruses start to show up and things like that, it actually takes several weeks, sometimes maybe even a month to a month and a half for the viruses really to get cleared out, even after you have taken all the even after you have done all your mite treatments. So you need to get your bees cleaned up before they start rearing the winter bees. Quite often in our store we have people come in and complain about losing their colonies over the winter. Of course, my first question is, did you treat for mites? And if they say yes, I ask them when. You'd be surprised how many people treat their bees for mites in this area in September and October and think they're doing the right thing because they're treating the bees before winter. That's not the right thing. You need to be treating your colonies before they're raising the bees that have to make it through winter. If you haven't treated before the bees for winter are being raised and hatching, they're already compromised to a slight extent with, not only the damage from the mites, but perhaps the viral load that the mites vector. A lot of these viruses are already in the bees, much like human beings. As long as their immune system is intact and in good condition, they'll fend off some of these viruses. But the moment they become compromised because of mite pressure, suddenly they start succumbing to these viruses, and the viruses start showing up in a much bigger way. So I'm going to say it one more time. Treat the bees that are going to raise the winter bees. Don't treat the winter bees. What you got, John? So you started with 3.
Right. I see 4 now. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, so this colony had 1 mite in a 300 bee alcohol wash. That's a good place. That's a really good place to be around the 1st of August, honestly. So, and I'm going to show some clips from some other yards. We did this mite check in. We saw very low numbers. One yard we couldn't even find a mite in. They were all zeros. So I'm pretty happy with how this extended oxalic acid release treatment worked. Again, it's not a curative treatment. If you go into using it with high numbers like 10s, 15s, 20s, you are not going to bring it down to 1 or 2. You're going to still have fairly high numbers. But if you start out with really low numbers, it'll keep it low until you can get around to doing a more serious mite treatment. We put this stuff on around the middle of May, and it's now the end of July, so it's been on for 2.5 months. So John wants to know why I'm laughing. I'm standing here doing all the camera work, and you guys are doing all the work. I'm not doing anything. So I really wanted to make this video, though, to try to get some of this stuff out.
That's what you pay us for.
That's what I pay you for, yeah. Again, because it's only 20 grams, it's not going to last a long time. And I expect to be back here in no longer than 5 days. If this was a full 30 grams, I'd take longer, 10 days maybe. And this rim is actually important. In the early days, 20 or more years ago, I was using Apiguard and putting it in between boxes. At that time I was using a deep and a shallow as a brood nest, and I would put that card in the middle. And I've since learned that whether you're doing a 2-box brood system or a single like we have here, it's actually best to put it on top. And it's actually better if you use a rim. Anywhere from 1 inch to 1.5 inches is ideal. I used to have 3/4 inch rims on all my lids. I don't have those lids anymore, and that worked. But I honestly think if you can get your rim up to about 1 inch to 1.5 inches, it'll actually be a little bit more effective. I know I can't explain that. It's just casual observation. But I think these rims are 1.25 inches, and they work pretty good. Which colony is it, John?
The one in the most corner one back there.
John says this colony is doing very poorly, and we can see it from here. There's only about 4 or 5 frames of bees in it. It's not sick, it just seems to have a poor queen. We are going to go ahead with this treatment. We're going to get all this treatment done, and then after we're finished we will inspect every colony, every brood nest, make a call on every queen. Every queen in this yard is from this season, this entire yard. In fact, our entire outfit, except for 4 specific yards, has been requeened. And I often say just because it's a new queen doesn't mean she might not have to be replaced. I have no problem replacing a queen from the same calendar year if she's not doing well. We'll let this one go through the treatment period, and then we will be replacing a few more queens before the season is over. We've got about 80 to 100 nukes sitting in the field where we can collect queens if we want to. And I know what we do is pretty labor intensive and may not actually, if you pencil out the money labor part, may not be the most efficient way to run bees, but it's just my way. I like to get everything as good as possible, and I'm not afraid to spend a little extra time and a little extra money doing it. It makes me feel better, for one thing. I know a lot of guys, and I have too, at times in the past, just let the chips fall where they may, and then in the spring or late winter pick up the duds. And that's legit. That's what a lot of commercial beekeepers do. But we actually make the effort to get everything in as good as shape as possible going into winter. Also, I guess I should comment about some of these empty places on these pallets. We did have a few swarms in this yard, and we did a wholesale requeening. So if a queen didn't take and they raised their own and it wasn't successful, that shows up as an empty spot. Or if a colony swarmed and did not requeen itself properly, that shows up as an empty spot. So that's what we're looking at here, is colonies that actually went queenless at some point during the season. A lot of newer beekeepers don't realize that just because a colony swarms and produces a new queen, there's no guarantee that that colony is going to be successful. I don't know the exact percentage of failure, but I'm going to guess 75%, perhaps 80% of the colonies are successful requeening them, and the other 25 or 20% that are not, they go queenless and they turn into duds. We have 3 different types of queens in this yard. I got some queens given to me by Ray Alvarez at Alvarez Honeybees out there in California. Become sort of friendly with him, and seems like a nice guy. And he wanted me to try some of his Saskatraz and some of his Golden West line of bees. The Golden West comes from Randy Oliver. Of course, the Saskatraz bees come from Canada. So they're mixed in here along with some bees from us, and we're just going to do some comparisons this year. All of the bees are doing well. Then we also got some pole line queens from some folks in Massachusetts and Florida, and then I'm going to get some more out of Louisiana that I'm going to requeen those 4 yards that I mentioned that are not requeened yet. They're going to be part of a research project, so I'll talk about that much later when we get into it, maybe next spring. Anyway, good bees. All lines seem to be doing well. Saskatraz, Golden West, and our Caucasians all seem to be coexisting side by side, all doing well, and all look much the same in strength and health and everything at this moment. These colonies, for the most part, are pretty heavy. They're going into this treatment phase with plenty of food. we do not have to treat, or excuse me, we do not have to feed at this time. After the treatment is over and we're inspecting all the brood nests and making a call on the quality of the queens, at that time we will figure out who needs to be fed and how much they need to be fed. We'll probably put a number on the lid like a 1, 2, 3, which would represent 1 feeding, 2 feeding, 3 feeding. So but that's the good time to make a real judgment on everything. Queen quality, feeding, everything. That'll come after the treatment period is over. I want to say something about this oxalic and thymol. You don't want to use it at the same time. Oxalic acid and thymol have at least a mild synergistic toxic interaction when they're in the colony at the same time. Oxalic acid is not absorbed by the comb. So taking oxalic off and putting thymol on right away is a zero issue. If it was reverse, I would be wanting to take a little time between the treatments. Thymol is absorbed by the beeswax comb, but it dissipates very quickly. So if I was having, for instance, if I was putting thymol on and then backing it up with an oxalic, I'd want to wait a while so the thymol would dissipate and you weren't exposing the bees to both compounds at the same time. In other words, what I'm saying is do not have oxalic acid and thymol in your colony at the same time. Again, they have somewhat of a toxic synergistic chemical interaction. Okay, we're in our Highlands Road yard, just out of Dillard. It's between Dillard and Highlands, North Carolina. It's a little bit of a higher elevation yard. And they did good too. This yard, unlike the last yard, is entirely queens that were raised by us. A lot of Caucasian genetics in here. They look about the same, huh, John?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's funny how some of these guys chewed up their little pads and others barely touched them. We do see, from time to time, we'll see a few mites on top of these pads, but not a lot. Of course, again, these colonies started with fairly low numbers, and what I'm glad to see is that they still have fairly low numbers. Let's do some mite tests here too, John.
Okay.
Go ahead and grab that kit, please. We keep that kit in our side box. It goes everywhere we go. We always have it. If we run across a colony that seems to be compromised for some reason, first thing we want to do is do a mite check and make sure it's not a mite problem. Looks like a decent pattern, huh? Oh, good eye, John. John is good at spotting queens, especially if they have a big green dot on their back, huh, John?
That tends to help.
Yeah. John, I think this is going to be the winter where we replace these pallets. They're kind of looking old and a little bit rotten.
Yeah, they've been here for a minute.
They've been here for a while, yeah. So this winter we will switch these out. What you got? Two.
Yep.
Okay, not terrible. Let's do a couple more. Okay, so a little educational moment here. We quite often tell beekeepers to take the outside frame out first so there's less danger of rolling a queen. But if you notice, John's very good at just making an extra 1/4 inch or 3/8 gap in there and pulling that frame out without touching anything. And that's why we feel comfortable taking frames out of the middle, simply because we've had a lot of practice at it. New beekeepers, I would recommend taking an outside frame out first because the queen is less likely to be there, a little less danger of rolling her as you take the frame out. I think we can use the same alcohol. There's only 2 mites in that wash kit, so let's just use the same alcohol over again. What you got?
the same too.
So you got a 0 here, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, 0s are good. What you got, John?
The same too.
Same 2?
Yep.
So that colony's a 0 also. Okay, one more and then I'll give you a break. We'll quit.
Okay.
Hey, John.
Which is like, I know there's another one in there. I guess. Oh, okay.
You got 2?
Yeah, the same 2.
Same 2. So this colony's a 0 also. So we've got several 0s and one with a 2. That's a good place to be. I think we got the general idea. The most mites we found in any of these that had these strips is 3 over the last couple of days. That's a very good place to be around the 1st of August. Normally we see things like 5s and 10s and other numbers like that. So, and even more, like, you know, occasional 15 or 20. We're not seeing any of that except for the bees that went to South Georgia. And I have to assume that's because they had a much longer brooding period down there. They got the same treatment, but they did not hardly go broodless in the winter. Yeah, I know. It's boring, I know. Huh?
Nothing.
You got 0 again?
Yep.
So now the question is, why are we treating for mites? Yeah. I have a new attitude on mites. I don't treat mites to bring the numbers down. I treat mites so I don't have high numbers in the first place. We are going to go ahead with this Apiguard treatment. I really want to have as low mite numbers as possible, and we're going to continue doing mite checks here. We just got 3 0s in a row, and I know better than that. I'm sure that some of these have some mites in them. So these guys are very patient with me. They know when I pick up the camera that everything slows way down to a snail's pace. That's okay. We have fun with it. This is fun. I'm enjoying doing these YouTube videos and showing our experiences and talking about what we do and what we see, and I try to keep my ego out of it, and if I see something that I've done wrong, go ahead and report that too. And I do things wrong. I've been doing this since 1981, and there's not a year goes by that I can't look back and go, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that. Every year there's something that I just... and the thing is that every year is different. There's no such thing as 2 years that are exactly alike, and that's part of the art of beekeeping. You got to be flexible and go with the flow. Be able to change with the times and do what's appropriate in the moment. Okay, so I just got through editing the video that I'm going to put out on Sunday morning about mite treatments. And after reviewing it several times, it has occurred to me that I left out something that I feel is pretty important. It's something I'm beginning to feel kind of strongly about, and that is the idea that the future of mite suppression is not going to be about more and better mite treatments, but that the future is going to be about, and needs to be about, better genetics. It's going to be about bee breeding for beekeepers as a whole. It's already starting to happen with Mother Nature. I know of a number of pockets of feral bee populations that are flourishing and growing without any treatments at all. And many smaller beekeepers and some commercial beekeepers too are starting to have these lines of bees that can go without any mite treatments at all. And I see it from time to time in our own outfit. Many people that watch our videos will know that We really like Caucasian bees because they're so gentle and easy to work with, and we like some of their other characteristics too. And sometimes when I alcohol wash an entire yard, we'll see some mediocre to perhaps high mite numbers, and then have one or two that show no mites at all, or perhaps very low numbers. And really, that's the beginning of a bee breeding program right there. So we're going to start to work with our own population a little bit, while at the same time bringing in some genetics from other lines that are already showing mite resistance, incorporate a little of that, and I think that's the future of our outfit. I will still be treating for mites. I'm not going to quit treating and let my whole outfit just collapse while I breed from the survivors, but I think we can still treat and make big inroads, deep inroads into better bee genetics at the same time. And in the future, you're going to see me talking about it, because that's the direction we're going to go. I think the future is with better genetics. I really do.
Hi, my name is Jesse. I'm one of the beekeepers at Blue Ridge Honey Company. I wanted to take a second to show you what the mite wash kits look like in our trucks. Starts off with a 15-quart plastic tote that we get from Walmart. Inside of that, we have a roll of paper towels, a half-cup scoop, which is about 300 bees, 91% isopropyl alcohol, and an easy checker. There are 4 different types of fluids that you can use for your washes, the most effective being the 91% isopropyl alcohol or the Dawn Ultra dishwashing liquid. The recipe for the liquid is 1.5 tablespoons to 1 gallon of water. A little less effective is the 70% isopropyl alcohol and the 0-degree windshield washing fluid. And then a little less effective than that is the CO2 or the powdered sugar. The Dawn and the isopropyl alcohol will kill your bees, but that is a small price to pay for the future of your colony. So we start this procedure off with having an empty tote and then filling your easy checker halfway with the fluid of your choice. I like to choose a frame of open brood with capped brood so that I've got a chance of finding the most mites, and then make sure the queen's not on there. I shake the frame into the tote. The foragers will start to fly home, leaving me with the nurse bees. I'll tap that into the corner, grab my half-cup scoop, place the bees into the easy checker quickly, and replace the lid. Go ahead and get them wet. Let that work its magic while you return the bees to the colony, and then start swirling your easy checker for about 60 seconds. After 60 seconds, I'll check the bottom to see if we have any mites. If we see more than 2 to 3 mites, we know we want to do something. Viruses start to show up when you see a count of 15 mites or more, and you'll definitely start to see the compromised colony health. Next, after you've done your mite roll, toss your bees, and we like to try to use the alcohol that's in the wash multiple times if we can. We'll put everything back in the tote, and this goes back in the truck, all nice and neat. We try to do mite washes once a month, and definitely right before we treat, and definitely 2 weeks after we treat, to make sure that the treatment worked.